Buying or selling a home is one of the most important decisions you'll make in your entire life. Call the Holly Ritchie team today for a free market analysis.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spanning the Need. I got a great guest tonight, an old friend of mine from years ago. He is the owner of Two Ticks in the Dog Production and the host of his own podcast, The Prodcast, Jim Fogerty. Jim, thanks for talking with me tonight.
Hey man, thanks for inviting me. I'm psyched.
No, I have to ask, and we'll get into kind of your background. We'll talk about how you actually got the name Two Ticks and the Dog.
Okay.
But talk about how you kind of got started and really kind of got into your own thing with what you're doing now.
So I was a big movie fan as a kid. My grandparents, watched me after school while my parents were working, and used to watch a lot of old movies. And I was just always into movies. And my grandmother is a self-taught and self-trained artist, and my grandfather is an amazing storyteller. And so when I went to study at Bowling Green State University, where I got a BA in film from, I didn't know what I wanted to study other than I wanted to be a writer. I knew I was kind of into writing. And so what kind of writing? I had shadowed a journalist in high school on a career day, and he had gone from different police precincts, getting the police blotter and going to OSP and getting their reports and that kind of stuff. And it seemed like, a lot of, you're reporting, which this is back, in the 90s when reporting was reporting, now it's kind of editorialized, right? But this was just straight up reporting. I thought, I want to do something creative. I want to be able to create stuff. And so Bowling Green, along with some of the state schools that I'd visited, had a very good creative writing program. So I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And they have a journalism program and TCOM, all kind of tied in together. So that's where I chose to go to school at. But I didn't declare a major until I was actually a junior. And I didn't even know you could really study, making films and production and that kind of stuff until I got there. I mean, I knew you kind of could, but I thought you had to go to like USC and UCLA or NYU. You had to go to the coasts. I didn't know they had these, things locally for us Ohio kids. And when I got there, my love of movies and my, desire to write and to reach as many possible people, the broader audience with all art forms. So it wasn't just ink on paper. It was, a visual medium and music and theater. You were acting and, so it was like creative writing on steroids, with this visual sense. And so that's how I got into the desire to do that for a living. When I moved home, I got a job very quickly. A guy named Mike Sparacino gave me my first job in production, post-college or after graduation, and at Advantage Video Productions, which was located down in Warren. And I learned from Mike how to make commercials and how to do that thing in a finite timeline. A movie, it's 90 to 120 minutes. If it's The Godfather, it's, 160.
3 hours.
Yeah. So, so it just depends. And then a short film, you have a littler space, but this was like finite. It's 30 seconds. That's all you got. You got to hit it can't be 29, can't be 31. So I was lucky enough to work for him for a couple months. And while I was doing that, I was putting together an ensemble cast of friends and fellow artists, if you will, to make an independent film, a feature film. And that was my area of study. And when that film got done, we needed to travel with it. We had, we needed to go to film festivals. We had college tours. We did some stuff like that. Well, you need money for that. And I was working for Sparacino at that particular time. And I was at one time waiting tables for Bob Abruzzi over at Cafe 422, but I needed to make a little bit more scratch. And so the co-producer and one of the co-stars of the film, Eric Murphy, who we graduated high school together, he was like, dude, we should make commercials. I was like, man, I don't want to make commercials. Like, I'm a filmmaker, right? So
like, beneath you.
Yeah, he said, we should make commercials. And we were both working for the Census Bureau at the time, which was part-time work, but I think they paid you like $10 an hour. Now, mind you, this is in 1999, 2000, 2001, $10 an hour, you know, it's like, well, it's okay money. It was not very difficult. It was better than working, you know, at the melt shop at Copperwell Steel, a CSC, where I worked for a couple summers. And so he was like, I said, I don't want to give up this $10 an hour gig. You know, we got this for like a couple months. And we were preparing for a showing at the McDonough Art Museum on the campus at Youngstown State with our film. And we shot on a digital format. So we were not only responsible for providing them with the media, but we also had to bring the players and stuff too, because the technology was so new, they didn't have a way to show it. So we had to bring basically the camera we shot it on and plug it in and, you know, the whole deal. And so it was a lot of work, and we were kind of busy promoting and going to channel 21 and 27 and, you know, playing Movie Maker on local, you know, on our local news stations. And so I was thinking about this, and I had to go. And at the Census Bureau, you have to knock on people's doors and ask them questions. And they have a short format. How old are you? Where do you work? Are you married? Are you single? How much do you make? And then they have the long format, which is like a half an hour, 45 minutes of asking questions that aren't like interpersonal, but it's a little bit more in depth. It feels like a little bit more of an invasion of privacy. And I was getting ready to knock on this person's door who I knew. I happened to draw a guy who I knew. And I was like, man, I can't do this. So I called Eric up and I go, hey, you're right, man. Let's go make some commercials and we'll make some money and we'll have the money to go to these film festivals. And he was like, I don't want to give up that $10 an hour. So I said, man, all right, well, I'll do it myself. So I started kind of as a one-man band, and things have, grown out of that basically. The short of it was we were able to get enough money together to pay for gas and submissions to film festivals and to do some traveling and things of that nature. And then, in the interim of doing that, I started to get some more referrals for television work, and it kind of, it got out of control. And now 20 years later, this is what I'm doing. Still making films, but making a living in advertising, in commercial advertising, which has been great.
And we talk about kind of how a journey can change over time. You know what I mean? We talk about how you were getting ready to knock on a guy's door, like, let's go do the 30 seconds. So sometimes things can hit you when you don't realize it.
Yeah, least expected. I think the quote is something along the lines of, and I heard it, credited to John Lennon. You want to make God laugh, tell him you have a plan for your life. And, I think if we get too rigid in setting what we're doing, we miss some of the joys of evolving, of kind of rolling with things. Jiu-jitsu practitioners talk about rolling, and it's wrestling, and you're trying to choke somebody out or arm bar them or, whatever it is, but you're rolling. And the idea of rolling is you're kind of similar to a judo mentality that people are probably more familiar with. You're using someone's inertia and momentum for your own purposes. So someone pushes you, and instead of resisting, you pull them as they're pushing. You use that, and we do that in life sometimes. Things happen to us. You have this set plan, and I think if we're too rigid, we miss some of these, kind of mystical things that happen to us along the way. So,
Well, and I think that it kind of makes me, you kind of think, okay, you started 20 years ago, and you kind of hear, what is Two Ticks in the Dog production? I've never heard of it. The name is so different from like, what's Two Ticks? I have what? Yeah, on my dog, maybe. I mean,
right.
that's how I'm assuming it. I mean, I remember I've known you for a long time,
Wow.
and I didn't years ago. I didn't put two together, and I'm like, Two Ticks. What's that? And that's the name of my company. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? It's funny.
Sure.
How did you come up with that name?
So had I planned this out a little bit better and been able to see myself as an adult doing this, not as a 20 something, I probably would have planned the name a little bit better. And we've toiled with name changes or with creating a different company to kind of encompass everything that we do. Because initially when we started out, it was just production, just like the name says, not the Two Ticks and the Dog part, but Two Ticks and the Dog Productions, right? And so the productions part is the cameras and the microphones and the lights and the production part of it, the editing and putting it together. But we do media buying and campaigns and full-blown electronic advertising initiatives. And that name doesn't really suggest this is kind of we're not a full service advertising agency. We're kind of a boutique that specializes in electronic, television, radio, digital, on-screen cinema, creating an entire campaign, that kind of thing, web, interactive, internet. Not that I'm trying to make this a commercial for Two Ticks, mind you, okay? But when I started, it was just about being an artist. I was just a filmmaker. And Spike Lee, the great Spike Lee, his production company is 40 Acres and a Mule. And there's other production companies out there, that are, Participant Media. And, they all have these like really kind of cool, clever names, Relativity Films and blah, blah, blah. But I always went back. I'm a big Spike Lee fan. So I always kind of went back to 40 Acres and a Mule, or the Robert Rodriguez production company is escaping me right now. Something Banditos. Quentin Tarantino had a band apart, and so we needed something that was like cool, right, and hip at the time. We're these 20-something guys, and we're making this movie, and I didn't know anything about taxes and write-offs and bank accounts and things of that nature at the time, but we needed these things for those purposes. So we needed a company to run the bank account through if in fact the movie sold and we all became, the next big Sundance thing and we all became millionaires overnight, right? That's why you get into film.
Not a millionaire? You didn't make your independent films didn't make, okay.
Yeah, we made any millions yet, man. I'm still waiting. So they, I was in the middle of working with an accountant at the time, and he said, well, you got to have, a company name. And I said, oh, it's got to be something about productions. And I had written a script in college called Two Ticks in the Dog. And that was the film I initially wanted to make. And I had pitched it to some production companies, and a producer, an indie producer in Akron, was interested in it. And he thought, this is kind of how Wax and Gibbous came to be, is he said, oh, we can probably raise about 50 grand and make this indie film, Two Ticks in the Dog. And Edward Burns had just finished recently Brothers McMullen prior to us working on Wax and Gibbous. And the rumor was he shot that film somewhere between, $25,000 and $50,000. I was like, man, okay, if Ed Burns can do it, well, we could do Two Ticks in the Dog the same way. But it was a really many, many locations, a lot of actors. It's dealing with a lot of, Wax and Gibbous is 20 something, but this is like a lot of 20 something. And there's a high school football game. And it's like all these real bigger set pieces, which I was not equipped and experienced at the time to do that, at 24 years old. So we pared it down and we created this film, Wax and Gibbous, but we needed a production company and a name and business cards. So Eric Murphy, who was the co-producer of Wax and Gibbous and one of the co-stars, and is a filmmaker now, and we could talk about that. He's got it, does Ancient Aliens now, and did the Trafficant documentary, that came out last year, and that's a fantastic thing. He was producing, we were producing Wax and Gibbous at the time, and he said, we got to get these cards made. I said, okay. He said, what do you want to call it? And I said, well, call it Two Ticks in the Dog Productions. That'll keep that fresh in my mind so that when we're done with this film and we make our millions, we can self-finance Two Ticks in the Dog, And so he goes, okay. And he goes to the printer. And, as you and your guests probably have surmised now, I run a lot of words together sometimes. I'll talk fast. When I said Two Ticks in the Dog, he heard Two Ticks and the Dog. And so we got these cards back, and they said Two Ticks and the Dog. So we just kept it. I was like, we already paid the $30 for, 500 business cards, which that was a lot of money back then. I don't want to get them reprinted. He goes, you want to get them reprinted? No. Yeah. Keep them. Because I never thought it was going to, it was just we're going to make the movie and then, we'll move on to something else. And it just stayed. And so, and it's funny to talk about, ticks and things. We've had people come to the studio and kind of, hey, how's it going? Do you guys do flea dipping here? They're not sure what exactly it is. So,
yeah, it's just one of those things, because when you hear it, it's an interesting starting point. Like, hey, how did you get Two Ticks and the Dog? Well, it was actually supposed to be Two Ticks in the Dog.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that brings up a good thing is you're 20 years in to your run, 20 years. Now we're handling probably the most versatile pandemic that we've seen in over a century. How have you guys been dealing with it as a small business, as just a company trying to survive, or because there's not a lot going on? Businesses are not advertising or using as much media as they do, or are they moving more to the digital online advertising because people aren't out and about anymore? They're more of in-house now.
So certainly I'd be lying to you if I said it has not been challenging. It's been extremely challenging. We're a small company. My creative partner, Matt Smith, lives in Brooklyn, New York. He moved there, I want to say about 9 years ago, right before my son was born. And we've adapted through technology. Matt does thing. Being in Brooklyn has been as a editor, like a finisher. We do a lot of what we call pre-cut here. We'll do rough cuts here and then send the footage to Matt to kind of finish and plug in based on the script with graphics and any kind of effects or special effects that, and so that's one component that hasn't changed. So because we were already kind of set up for that, it's made it easier. But we also have a creative director in a girl named Julie Smith from Hubbard, and she's been with me 10 years. And then some other players, integral players. One of my and we still collaborate. We just shot last month together, or maybe the month before in November. A guy named Matt Garofalo, who graduated from Kent, and he's moved because of his wife's job closer to Pittsburgh. So he was up towards Kent, which from downtown Warren is about 40 minutes to south of Pittsburgh. So he's
that's on the other side.
Yeah, so he's like an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes away. So, that's like a 3-hour drive to and from. So I'll bring him in on jobs that are bigger, where I definitely need 2 cameras and, a second shooter or whatever it is. But a lot of the stuff, because of my initial background where I was kind of a one-man band, we've adapted in studio wise, at least to be able to one or two guys, lights, camera, one guy's on sound. We're used to having 3 people in the studio setting. If we go to 2, also very, very manageable. But there's been times where we've just been 1 and it's been me and I'm running, the whole gig. And so because that's how I started as kind of a one-man band, writer, director, producer, director of photography, editor, salesman, the whole gig, I've been able to kind of evolve back into that role, but it took some time because for the last 12 years, 13 years in this space, we've had a whole team around us. And so I've been used to having my team around me who are awesome, fill in where, because some of these people, like you got to be proficient. Like I wouldn't be any good at my job if I didn't know a little bit about everything, but I'm not great at every component, right? I'm good at a couple components and those are the strengths that I, use in the job, but you find strengths in others and they fill in where you're not maybe as proficient at that particular, like editing or like whatever it is. And so I've had to get back into that mode. And of course, billing took a dip in, everything shut down basically in March. So April, May, and June, we lost like $90,000 of revenue that was booked, which is for a small business like us, a lot of money. And some of it was media money. A lot of it was production money. The production money, we make a little bit more of a profit margin as a business person, no more of a profit margin on than the media buying. But it all went down. And so, we're all furloughed and so the chug to kind of get back moving again, to gain that momentum has been very, very slow. And we haven't built the book of business back to even bring some of our people back at the levels that they were, being paid. And so, we're not a nickel and dime shop. And I don't mean that as a disparaging way. I mean, I don't think we're the most expensive production in the region. We're certainly not the most affordable or the cheapest. Part of that is because we've got incredible artists working on this who've been with me. Like I said, Julie Smith, 10 years, Matt Smith since 2002. That's my creative partner in Brooklyn. That's 18 years. We have like a shorthand, this guy works for like MTV and reality TV by day and is doing two ticks editing and post-production and stuff like that by night. And so these are all talented. They're earning. We're talking now about the commonplace recently with the new president and different things that's happening. Minimum wage and livable wage and things of that nature. And so we pay our people. I wish we could pay them better, but we pay them pretty good. And I wish I could earn more myself, but we pay ourselves pretty good. That's a challenge to get that engine going again so that you have the work to obviously justify the paycheck, but then to keep it going. So the restart has been slow.
Have you lost, and I may not, have you lost clients because those small businesses have closed? Or are you seeing an uptick in business from little performing shops that used to go somewhere else, bigger agencies that are out of the region that are that are kind of now staying local with smaller businesses?
This business is a lot about not only what your deliverables are, the production that you're giving the client when it's all said and done. It's also about relationships. And especially when they are trusting you to be their eyes and ears and understanding of what a media buy is. So you can look at a TV commercial and everyone goes, oh, that's good or bad, or, everybody's a critic in that sense. Oh, I didn't like that because they didn't say it a certain way, or, whatever it was, right? Everyone can critique it. But there's not a lot of people a lot of laymen who can look at a media buy and go, this is going to be effective. And coupled with the message of their advertising, it's even more of a complexity. Now, it's not brain science or rocket science, right? I mean, but so to answer your question, we've always been entrusted by our clients to be those eyes and ears and experts. So, I not only have a BA from Bowling Green with a concentration in film production and film studies, and I did some postgraduate at UCLA for screenwriting, but I've not only worked for Two Ticks, I taught high school for a while and things of other nature, but I also worked for Time Warner Cable when they were still in existence. Now they're Charter One, Spectrum Television, Spectrum Cable. But I worked for them as an account executive, so I really learned about media buying and things of that nature. So there's a little bit of a science to it. Those clients that we have trust us to do that. So we have a huge range from the small mom and pop shows that have one location, whether they be a bar or restaurant or whatever it is, a consignment shop, to, companies that use us that have 400 locations. We're buying digital media across the United States. Now, most of our business is within Northeast Ohio. So we've had businesses that haven't closed. Actually, I take that back. One of our more recent clients pre-COVID was the Speakeasy Lounge. It was Pam and Tony Schofer right here on the square in downtown Warren. Great little place. It's now called the Underground, which is owned by now another one of our clients, Angela Price, and her partners that own Jacked now have taken over what was the Speakeasy. And that wasn't really because of COVID. That was because Pam and Tony were moving to be closer to their grandchildren and their children. And so we haven't had anybody close, but we've had a ton of business through media buying cancel, right? So you're not going to be paying for TV or radio or, OTT or digital while you're sheltering in place or while you're, running a skeleton crew. So we've had a lot of media cancellations early on. Some of that stuff is just starting to get turned back around. And we've been fortunate to rely on some of those clients that have been with us for a long time. They're mom and pops, or they started out as mom and pops. And as they grew, we grew with them from one location to multiple locations. And we've been blessed to maintain those relationships, but we've also subsisted on accounts from outside of the area. So we got some work from just in 2020 from Chicago and from Cleveland and from, outside of the Trumbull, Mahoning, Columbia,
Right.
Shenango Valley kind of thing.
And I think that shows that how diverse an organization kind of has to be during this difficult time. Can't just look at your kind of inner workings. You got to kind of look outside the box.
For sure. Yep.
And I know you've talked a little bit. You have 20 years. What are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on? Just give me a couple that you've liked and you've really had fun working on over the last, I don't know, we'll say 10, 15 years that really kind of you had fun with, or are they all fun?
They're not all fun. They're all learning experiences. They're all certainly, you have to kind of be not to an expert level, but you have to be, we're dealing with a finite amount of time, right? So we do more than just 30-second TV commercials, or, it could be a 2-minute web video. It could be an infomercial. It could be a short film or a promo film or a documentary about traumatic brain injury or whatever. I mean, in 20 years, we've worked on some great projects. We've had great clients. from an advertising perspective, you remember the ones that are either really fun, or sometimes you get a client who is in that 80-20 rule, and that 80-20 rule, right, is you want to have clients that, you got 80% of your clients that take up 20% of your time, so you can cultivate new business and grow and, provide more for your teammates and more for yourself and get better equipment. You want to grow. And then you've got 20% of your clients that take up 80% of your time. And those are the ones that sometimes, you kind of pound your head up against the wall. And some of those are fun too. What's great about this business is that you learn a lot in different areas of expertise. So we have clients that are hospitality, they're restaurants. We have workout centers. We have medical clients. We have political clients. We have to be able to take what the intricacies of their business and their procedures and the things that they're selling and condense it and sell it to you, or at least get you interested in a 30-second TV commercial or a web video or whatever it is. So there's a lot of fun, whether it's a tough client to deal with or whether it's an easy client, right? You have fun with a lot of them. I had a shoot today with my alma mater, Warren JFK, where my son goes. And so we've been working with them on some marketing initiatives for probably since before he went there, but for the last maybe 5 or 6 years. And I taught there part-time, right after college, a couple years after college. And we have a lot of fun because there's a lot of common ground. We're laughing and joking. But then there's projects that you work on that are, I can remember shooting stuff like hanging out of a helicopter, like strapped to the inside of a helicopter and hanging out with a camera, and being up in this helicopter, and Matt Smith and I, doing that stuff, or going down.
Those are called drones now.
Yeah. Now they're drones. This was pre-drone, this is pre-drone, or traveling, going to Florida or Minneapolis or New York City, or going to places where the job is fun, the production's fun, but then, the social part of it's fun too. You go out with your crewmates, or your teammates. They're your friends. I mean, they're your brothers, man. They're your sisters.
Right.
That's how we, at least we do it. And so, you have fun, man. You're establishing relationships. Is this a PG show?
Oh, it's everything. It could be everything.
Okay. So some memorable ones, like if my mom watches this, I'm just being honest, Mom. Like, we did some advertising for some after hours, how do they say, adult entertainment places, right? Known as strip clubs. Okay. So, you go to these strip clubs in your 20s and you're doing TV commercials for strip club. I mean, and it's like, am I getting paid, to do this? It's crazy. We did some marketing where we shot some stuff at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh, and got to meet Rocky Blyer. We got to meet Dave Grohl on some projects. Of course, he's a local guy, and we're on Dave Grohl. Yeah, and Dave Grohl Alley is right behind us in the window. So, we run into him a time or two in the alley. But, like, you get introduced to these, and it's kind of cool. You're like, man, this is cool. You have stuff that's memorable. Like, my son's 8 now, and he goes to Warren JFK. Of course, I put him in the commercial. He's, I'm obviously biased, but he's very astute and kind of a character like myself. So he can deliver a line, so he's been in commercials for that.
A little biased on that one.
Big time. So, just projects like that, man, stuff you have fun on, or stuff you learn things that are amazing that you would never have been exposed to, had that client not hired you.
Well, and you kind of have to change with the times. I mean, you going from, like you said, back 20 years ago, there was no internet, or if there was internet, it was very, very light compared to what it is now.
Right.
And you kind of have to change. So you've been working on a podcast to kind of change with the times.
Yeah.
And Yes, you see that correctly. It's the Prodcast.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about talk about how that got started and how you've been changing and what you guys have been doing with that lately.
Sure. So we're spitballing the idea of changing it just to the prod. Because Prodcast, when you Google, autocorrects to podcast. Julie Smith, our development director here, who's been on furlough since March of last year. Julie, if you're watching this, I'm hoping you're coming back soon. Julie's got a growing family, and her son, all of her kids, I think, they go to Hubbard schools, and so they're some days on, some days off. But that's another challenge. I know that's not the question you asked, but that's another challenge with you're teaching your kids at school and remote learning and things of that nature. So, which will segue into being able to concentrate on the Prodcast. My brother-in-law, I'm late to the game. So my brother-in-law for a couple of years was like, dude, you got to start a podcast. And I go, man, I've never even listened. He was like, Joe Rogan, Joe Rogan, UFC and MMA. And
big ones.
Yeah, and I love his show, right? So he was the first one I really kind of listened to. Rogan and, Tim Ferriss and Bill Burr has one. I'm like slouching in my chair, so I'm like lowering the camera. Bill Burr has one, and Paul Stamets has one. Anyways, my brother-in-law was like, dude, you should do this podcast. You know all these kind of cool people. You could have them on your show and interview them, and you're entertaining and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I don't know, man. I mean, I guess. So I listened to Rogan a couple times, and we always talk about what you're saying, like being able to adapt and evolve and kind of reinvent yourself. And my brother-in-law was correct. We come across really interesting people, whether it's, Congressman Tim Ryan or Ray Mancini or, Dr. Zarin Makin or whoever it is, Ottavio Musumeci from Station Square, we just come in contact with like really interesting characters, but we're only getting their message out like 30 seconds at a time typically. So that's not a lot of time to kind of delve deep. And that's really how you get to know people, like what we're doing right now. So I thought that part of it was interesting. And then I was talking to Julie Smith and I said, what do you think about us having a podcast? She's like, oh, that's really cool. And she said, well, what do you imagine it as? I said, well, it would be about people we come into contact with in our production life. And I'd host it and, I'd ask them questions. And similar to when you have somebody set across from you and you're doing testimonials, and you're asking them questions. We've done a lot of documentary work. So you're asking people questions and things of that nature. And she goes, I think it'd be cool. I go, man, we need a name. And she goes, well, how about Prodcast? Because it's like podcast and it's short for production. I was like, oh, I love this. Had I known the autocorrect feature with Googling Prodcast into podcast, I may have reconsidered. But I was talking with James Waters, who you brought up, and I said, what do you think? I was running the name by like people that I trust creatively. James and I went to college together and we worked together for many years.
Yeah, I refereed high school basketball with him, still know him, still talk to him every once in a while. I've known him for a long time, been to tournaments with him.
Yeah, he is a great guy and a wealth of knowledge when it comes to production. I mean, he's just a great human being. Recently, like yourself, got married. Congrats. James, if you're watching this, congrats. He's also the director.
James just got married last year.
You got married last year? He got married a couple weeks
ago. I got married in 19. He just got married.
Yeah, he's really in the honeymoon stage. Okay. So
James, we're going to be coming after you. Don't you worry. We know what's going on.
He's going to come on the podcast. You should have him on your show too. He's the executive director of the Canton Film Festival. So, anyways, I ran some stuff by him and others, and I said, "What do you think about this name, the Prodcast?" He goes, "Well, it kind of reminds me and sounds like a prod, like a cattle prod. And I was like, man, I like this idea, because now it's giving me a visual. We got a cow with a cattle prod, and you hear this, if you've ever listened to episodes, we have a sound effect, bzzz, and, the logo is a cow kind of with a shocked look on its face and a cattle prod. And so anyways, that's how it started. It started with these ideas. And then, I did some research, obviously, and I invested in the gear. And Brandon Giovanni from MDI Studios, who does websites, I contacted him and I said, hey, man, how'd you like to come on as a sponsor? I need a website built, for this show. And he was like, oh, that's cool. How'd you like me to come on as a co-host? And I was like, okay. Like a fact checker, like Jamie is for Rogan. I was like, all right, cool. And so we started the show, and I thought, I'm going to do 10 episodes. I'm going to commit, to 10 episodes. Him and I committed to 10 episodes. And in 10 episodes, we'll figure it out. And we'll figure out if we're any good at it and if it's something we want to continue. And so we got to the 10th episode, and we could see a progressive growth. It wasn't very fast, but it was progressive. And then we decided, all right, we're going to do a full season, and we'll make a season similar to like episodic television, 26 episodes.
25 episodes now. Well, now they're starting to cut them down to like 16 to 20. And it's like, really? You got 8 in the fall and 8 in the spring. And then they come with 8 in the summer, that it's like, yeah, because what people may not think of is the reason why they do a lot of game shows is because when you're bringing people on, it's free to them. They're not paying actors to come on, so the sponsors are lower than they normally are.
Yeah.
And that's probably something people don't understand.
Yeah. Well, we just kind of arbitrarily picked 26 episodes, right? We're like, all right, because there's, a lot of these, when these seasons this is back in the day, like Friends and things like that. I get 26 seasons or 26 episodes a season. So we did 26, and then, we had fun doing it the first season. We had some pro bono sponsors. We had some, Two Ticks and the Dog obviously is a sponsor of the podcast. And then season 2, we had an investment of about $1,500 in gear and, our time and stuff like that. And I thought, well, I'd like to at least be able to recoup the cost of the gear. So I'm going to do sponsorship, where we actually take paid sponsorship, but we wanted to do giveaways and things of that nature. So we've been extremely blessed. So season 2, Coates Car Care, who's a long-term client of Two Ticks and the Dog, became our season 2 full season sponsor. And Station Square in Liberty, I mentioned Ottavio Musumeci, and Salvatore's Italian Grill in Howland, and they have other locations, obviously, but they all came on as sponsors too. And so we've built an audience social media-wise by doing people sign up for free giveaways, and we give away car washes, and we give away food, gift certificates at Salvatore's or Station Square. And it's just been a lot of fun. And it's funny because a lot of the people who are signing up for the giveaways are friends and family, or, them through 6 degrees of separation. And so if you'll send them, I sent a buddy of mine, I drew his name. My son and I will do a go live on Facebook, and he draws the names out of the hat as the people, enter their names over the season. So he drew my buddy's name. And the other day, with Christmas, several weeks ago with Christmas, months ago with Christmas, said, hey man, thanks for sending me that stuff. And I thought, he's like, for Christmas. Because Christmas was delayed. The mail was delayed. So I go, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, I only sent my clients Christmas cards. We're not a Christmas card family. I love getting Christmas cards, but we don't have our stuff together enough to get a picture and mail out. So I didn't send this dude to Christmas.
Hey, that's why the cell phones are so advanced. You can take a picture of your family.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, right?
Yeah.
I go, man, I didn't send him a thing. Well, here he had signed up for one of the giveaways. We drew his name. And I go, oh, man, yeah. He goes, you sent me all these gift cards. And I go, oh, it was from signing up from the podcast. Well, he had signed up in the beginning of the season. He had forgot that he had signed up, and I forgot I sent it to him. So it's a lot of fun. We have great guests on, and it's been a great
Who's been one of your couple fun guests that you've enjoyed having, or your best interviews?
Certainly season 2. I'm a huge fight aficionado, huge boxing fan. So we had Kelly Pavlik on, former middleweight world champion, and him and I got like kind of nerdy about boxing. And, I knew Kelly prior to the interview, but it was fun to talk with him, one-on-one. We'd see each other in social settings, and, we had done some work in the studio prior to, but, it was a great interview because we got to talk about boxing, which is really cool. And obviously he's an expert in the field. So that was a fun interview. This season we had Jackie Popovic on, which was really, really cool. She's the lead singer of the Vindies. Last season we had my uncle, the late, great Frank Castellano. I love that episode for 2 reasons. It provides a legacy interview for my family and for my uncle and his music. But he was, I like having musical guests on because it kind of breaks it up. And he debuted some of his original music. And of course, he's my uncle. So again, super biased.
Yeah, I think you probably said you're either on it or you're not going to be my uncle anymore, probably.
Yeah, I was real. It's funny because he's my uncle, and I was really nervous to have him on because I hold him in such high regard. And so I didn't want to be like, I didn't want him to think I was like, a poser, So he came on. That was a good one. We've had some really good ones, man. Mike Polk, Factory of Sad.
Mike's a funny one.
Yeah, and his interview is funny. We had Austin Pendleton, who's a SAG-nominated, Tony-nominated actor and director. That was a great one. I like having artists on. Barry Berkey was on. Barry Berkey of this painting's fame. We had Jimmy Masacci on. We've had some really great. If you go to theprodcast.net, you can look at all the episodes. My dad was on. My uncle was on. My other uncle was on. They're all good.
It's nice because you kind of do a very diverse group of individuals, and it doesn't kind of keep like I'm kind of on the same boat where we do it. It's across the board. We've had people that about nonprofits. We've done nonprofit groups. We've done education. We've done health. We've done politicians, especially when we were rolling up to the election from last year. And I also did a Christmas special with local people with just singing Christmas songs from the John Reese Project, Leanne Binder, and just a bunch of good things. And I think it just shows the diverse of it, that we just enjoy what we do.
Well, what I really like about your format and your show, which is also kind of what I like about my format and show, is that we are promoting positivity of this area, and it's not in a short format, finite, it's a 2-minute video or 30-second or whatever. You get to kind of know these people, and there's other local podcasts that are doing this. And what's great about it is that we had Rick Stockburner on from Bright Energy Innovators, and he's explaining some really complex. Now, it's probably not one of the most listened to show, right? We get some web stats, and you can kind of see, and you can see who makes the downloads. But it's for those people that are interested in looking for more information on Voltage Valley, or more information on electric vehicles or electric charging stations, or, innovation, or those people who are looking for, Tim Ryan was on, and he talked about regenerative agriculture. And,
He's
that
a
are
hoot.
looking. He's a hoot. And a lot of people just judge him by the sound bites that you see him on TV, but they're going to sit down and talk with him for an hour and a half and get to know him. You get a different perspective. And so I think that's what's cool about your program and ours and other local podcasts is that you're really kind of getting to know these quote unquote movers and shakers of the area of Northeast Ohio and beyond. And people all across the country or all across the globe can listen. And recently, or season 1, we had a couple of guys from the Mahoning Valley Scrappers. And recently, the Mahoning Valley Scrappers went through some real challenges along with minor league baseball as to whether there was going to be a continuation of that. And so we had Dennis Malave and one of their players on, and these guys were from Brazil and Dominican Republic, and so it was kind of cool to have them on and talk about community and this building sense of community and the idea of, they're getting great ideas across, like persistence and dedication in athletics and, living your lifestyle right, et cetera, et cetera. And they're getting listeners from South America. So the next week after the show premiered, we can go look at the stats and see like, oh my gosh, we just picked up 30 listeners in Brazil. We just picked up, 16 listeners in the Dominican Republic. We just picked up wherever it was. And now those listeners are not only listening to that episode, but they might be listening to the Rick Stockberger episode or, another one of these where they go, oh man, that's kind of cool. They're doing some really cool stuff in the greater Warren, Youngstown, Sharon, Northeast Ohio area, man. And that's cool. And I want to be a part of that. So I guess in bringing this up, kudos for you to do what you're doing and have this show. Because I feel like we're kind of like the messengers or the ambassadors to those outside of the area. And for others who maybe have moved away can kind of catch up on some of the cool stuff that's happening here if they're not following the local news stations that are only putting probably, 2-minute bit out about it.
Well, I think that like one that was like, I've had someone from Finland who talked about they have a deal right now that they're going with NASA, European Union NASA type, and they're trying to do composite food where you don't need the normal food. So they're looking at really production in food, making it easier to produce with less resources. And this guy's a doctor, got research. It's one of the premier companies in the world right now in research and development. And they're in the process of putting this humongous food processing plant in the next 2 years, billions of dollars. And it was just interesting on what he talked about and some of the research that they're doing. And I got him all the way in Finland through a friend of mine.
Yeah, see, that's awesome. I like your format of your show. Obviously, we're social distance, and I'm at my studio, and you're at your home.
What are you talking about? I'm in the next room.
Yeah. Hey, can you bring me some more of those cookies?
Later.
Yeah, I am trying to, or I'm not trying to. I'm toiling with the idea of maybe doing that in season 3. Louis B. Free from the Louis B. Free Show is a buddy of mine. And he does that a lot. He'll get authors on, and they're all over the place. I love to be in the studio right across. We're socially distanced. We're 8 feet apart from our guests. That was a change that we've had to make, evolving production-wise, either in the podcast or microphone placement, not on the lav, on a boom in the studio kind of thing. But I love being right across the table from somebody and having that, kind of organic commentary. But because of COVID and because of, and obviously other things, right? I mean, we're not going to, we don't have the budget to fly somebody in, and have them come to Warren, Ohio. We're going to put them up at the best.
In the Warren International Airport or the Youngstown Regional International Airport.
Yeah, we don't quite have that budget per episode. And so we've been kind of toiling with this idea of kind of what you're doing. And so, but right now we're a non-video show because I get to get away from having to edit and that kind of thing. And it's just audio, and we just sit across from each other. We might crack a couple of beers and just have fun. Yeah.
Well, what are some? I know you guys are going into season 3 coming up, and you're finishing season 2.
We just finished season 2. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you looking for moving forward? What are kind of some of your plans with your podcast as well as your business in general? Kind of what's your goals in the next? Well, we're not. I would normally say what's your goals in the next 6 months to a year, but with pandemic, it's usually month to month.
Right. Yeah. Or week to week. Yeah.
Yeah.
So number one is survive, right? Like, we just want to be here. You know, I'm a planner, and I feel most comfortable when I have my bases covered. So on the short term with 2 ticks at a minimum, and even with myself, I've got my next 3 months of rent and all my expenses covered, both personally, Jim and Renee and Jimmy's expenses covered, and not by myself, mind you. I don't want my wife to see this and be like, "What do you mean? They think you cover all of it? I cover it too." My wife's she's a great worker.
She's the accounting of the family.
She's great. I married up, and so I'm blessed. But so for the next 3 months, first quarter, our personal bills are covered. My bills at 2 ticks are covered. And I did that for a couple of reasons. One, I was blessed to be able to do that. We had a great political season that saved our year at 2 ticks.
I think I've never seen so much money spent in my life when I looked at final numbers.
So, yeah, not only locally, but, I was just looking at final numbers. I had written an article back in, I want to say 2007 or 8, I think, for Politics Magazine, for campaigns and elections publications. And at the time, if I'm remembering my numbers correctly, Bears and Stearns did a report, and it was like $387 million spent on the presidential race. And this last race was over $1 billion. So that's two cycles later, or 3 cycles later, 2 cycles later, 3 cycles later, and an incredible amount of money. And locally, it translated the same way. So the political stuff really helped us. So we were able to kind of pay for some of it, but we're doing some upgrades here because, we're vested. We're very, very fortunate. Several years ago, Mark Marvin from Downtown Development Group. Mark Marvin is the gentleman, and Downtown Development Group is the company that bought the Robbins Theater and renovated it. They bought this building and renovated it. They've bought in some other properties and renovated them. He's been he's been a great steward for the city and in terms of Warren's redevelopment, and he's been great to us. And so we're vested here. We've been here, 13 years, a little over that, and we're doing some upgrades. So I've got to shut the business down, the studio, the production portion of it down for a couple of weeks. We're doing some upgrades, cosmetic upgrades to our office spaces, which is the room next door. And that's the short term. We just want to get past those renovations. Business-wise, we're just starting to kind of move forward again. The things that we want to do with the podcast are, we're looking at final numbers. We've got a little over 9,000 listeners right now worldwide. Our goal was to gain 10,000. So we fell short of our goal. I'm giving us a little bit of leeway because of the pandemic. We also weren't as consistent. So when you're doing a podcast, if anybody's listening out there and they're thinking about doing a podcast, there are certain times to release that podcast and that show to garner more downloads and more streams. And also, if you stay consistent and release either every day at the same time or once a week at the same time, every Thursday you're releasing for 26 weeks, you build that audience up. We were unable to do that in season 2 because we had some cancellations and we got a late start and the pandemic and all this other crazy stuff. So we are looking at breaking down the numbers because we do want to expand our sponsorship a little bit. This season, when we completed, and I haven't done the final budget numbers yet, but I think we've now paid for ourselves. So now it's, you don't do this. It's the same thing with coaching. Like I coached soccer for a number of years. You don't coach for the money, right? You coach because you love it or it gives you something else. So the podcast gives me an outlet to express my own opinions, but really to bring other guests on to educate and entertain those listeners. But I also want to make it worth my while and worth the co-host's while. And, there's money that goes into hosting the website and having, getting the metrics. You have to, you're paying subscription fees. There's cost involved. And so I'm hoping to build a plan that can bring us into season 2. We can expand our audience and we can also not really make any money, but kind of cover our bets, because every minute that I'm not doing production and I'm spending time doing the podcast, I'm potentially losing from a business standpoint. I'm losing profitability because, making, I didn't get into doing podcasting to make, $100 an hour or $50 an hour.
You could be like Joe Rogan.
I would love to. That would be great, right? It's like making art as a full-time job. But if I can cover my time and my ability and pay for some of my skill set, and I can make $10 or $15 an hour, which is nothing.
Well, I think it comes down to you enjoy what you do, or you wouldn't be doing it. No matter what numbers you look at, you give yourself a little leeway and kind of build it up from there.
For certain, but you want to, if you're trading time and you have to take away time from where you're making, say, $50 an hour on production gigs to making zero, or it actually costing you money if you're making zero because you're giving up your time, you want to get a little in return. Plus the co-host, you want to, so we're trying to build a business model out of the podcast that promotes Two Ticks and promotes entertainment and education for our listeners through our guests, but also kind of like hedges our bets a little bit and covers our time. So the short answer is I don't have a plan necessarily for season 3. I hope to get started sometime in March and release season 3 a little bit later in the season than I did the initial ones, the first 2 seasons, which we started in February season 1 and I think April of season 2, and build a library, because you have guests, it's like same thing. Like, hey man, can you do the show on Tuesday? No, I can't do Tuesday, but I can do it Thursday. Okay, cool. And you push it off a couple days, or, you want to have.
You gotta kind of just stay on pace or do what kind of record that type of thing and kind of go with it.
Yeah, you want to have some episodes in the can. So
exactly, and I think you're doing well. I mean, it seems that it's going well, and you're building your guest list, and I mean, I've heard some of them. I'm a fan as always. I've known you for a long time. You're doing well, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, well, we're having fun doing it, and I think that's the most important thing. Somebody said, if you're having fun doing what you do for a living and you're making a living at it, it's like not working a day in your life. And that's kind of how my life is. My wife sometimes, who worked extremely hard, and she has a whole different, I always kid her and say I work in the fantasy world. She is a social worker, and she deals with like serious issues, life and death issues. And that's taxing, and she works extremely hard. man, sometimes I don't get down here till noon, and I don't come home till 8 o'clock. It's like the Elks hours, right? Tony and I used to swim at the Elks, and I used to work there. And you didn't go to work till 11 o'clock. The pool opened at 11:30. The pool opened at noon. You had everything cleaned up at 11:30, and you'd work till 8. Same kind of thing. Some days you're working 6 a.m.
We go swimming, and we'd be home at right before it got dark.
Yeah.
Ride our bikes right down to right where we were, and those were the good old days. That one person likes to say, like, those were the good old days where we had no responsibilities.
Zero. The best. Still maybe the best job I ever had.
Being a lifeguard at the Elks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely some work ethic and environment started at the Elks. Yeah. She looks at me sometimes and she goes, "Are you just going to work now?" And I might have been working on the computer ahead of time or whatever. And I go, "Yeah." She calls this like the playground. Like, "Oh, you're going to the playpen?" The playpen. Because, I'm surrounded by like toys, lights and cameras and cool art. And, she's dealing with like life and death stuff. So I've been blessed and it's been fun.
I can imagine what she goes through. I served on the Mahoning County Children's Services Board for about 8 years.
Right.
So I know what those social workers go through. I've been on calls in the past years ago during my training there. They work hard. If someone wants to second guess them, they have probably one of the very most challenging jobs out there.
Yes.
Other than like police and firefighters, because they're the ones making the decisions. It's something that it would be very hard for me to even think about.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly.
Well, Jim, I loved having you come on. It's always a pleasure to see you. You're doing well. I appreciate what you're doing and everything like that.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for having me on. And we'll have to have you on season 3 so we can cross promote live with Anthony Spano.
Oh, boy. Well, I appreciate that. I'd be honored to come on.
Be great, man.
Well, now since we're kind of done with the fun part, now we really get into the fun part. At the end of each interview, we like to ask 5 questions to all of our guests. They're all the same questions.
Okay.
Your answer, there's no wrong answer or right answer. It could be personal or professional.
Okay.
So you sure you don't want to start drinking now?
I'm going to start drinking now. Yeah. Go ahead.
So over the years, what's been your best accomplishment? Personal or professional? Only need one.
Marrying my wife and starting a family and having a son has been amazing.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. To get some points for your wife.
There ain't nothing wrong with that, buddy. No doubt, right?
What's your best memory?
Oh, my best memory.
Swimming at the Elks?
No. Can I pass and come back to that question at the end?
We'll pass. Yeah. What's your best experience?
Personally and professionally?
Either one.
When my wife was getting ready to give birth to our son, which my dad always used to say, my parents split up when I was young, and my dad would always say, the best day of my life was the day you were born. And I would be like, okay, Dad, that's, of course you're going to say that to your son,
When you're thinking like, oh, I'm 15 years old. Why are you saying that to me? And then when you get older, you're like, oh yeah, now I kind of.
Well, yeah, at 15, you're like, is he placating me? Like, okay, yeah, the best.
What do you want from me?
But I finally understood it when my son was born. So one of the best moments of my life, and maybe this could probably fit into that previous question, one of the best memories I have is the day that my wife gave birth to my son, James, named after my father. I was named after his father. And we were in the delivery room singing Bob Marley songs, like in a very relaxed environment. And here come this new life into our world. And it was incredible. So that's maybe covers both. great memory, great moment. I don't know what the question was, but that's one of hanging with my wife, man, and singing Bob Marley before my son was born.
Well, maybe my wife will be pregnant. Ask me when I come on your show.
Honeymoon stage, man.
So, who would be your role model?
My role model. I've been really fortunate to have some great role models in my life, both male and female. From a professional standpoint, I love Steven Spielberg, and I love those Akira Kurosawa and Scorsese and like these filmmaker role models. But that's more from a professional standpoint. My role models in my life were always, I think, what if they're doing it right, should be the answer. My grandfather, my mother's father, I didn't know my father's father. He passed before I was born, but my mother's father, my father, my Uncle Frank, really all the male figures in my family, females too, but specifically my dad and my granddad, incredible role models that still to this day, my grandfather passed when I was 35, instill work ethic in you, instill all these things that you need to have to succeed, but also instill heart, because part of it is it's not just be a hard worker and be persistent and don't take no for an answer and kick ass kind of thing. It's be compassionate and be a steward of your environment and, leave a legacy of goodwill and good vibes and good thoughts. And so my dad and my grandfather were really encompass that. And my Uncle Frank Castellano. Yeah.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that. If there was one person you'd want to interview, anyone, it could be someone from history or someone now, who would it be?
Jesus.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
I'll take Jesus.
This may be your same answer. If there was one person you'd want to meet, past or present, not interview, but just meet, past or present, who would it be?
Actually, probably my grandfather, James Francis Fogerty, who was a infantryman, a specialized infantry man, was on the, I don't know what exactly it was called, the Panther destroyers. He was a tank. He trained with these tank guys in World War II. And then he became like a specialized infantryman where he got all this specialized training, and they went into into Germany. He got into Normandy. They stayed at Erwin Rommel. Rommel was a tank general in North Africa. Erwin Rommel, he matched wits with General George Patton in World War II. And I never knew him. So I would love to sit and just pick his brain for a couple hours. And then, like a good Irishman, I'm Irish and Italian. I'm more Italian than Irish. I would love to sit and have a few beers with James Francis Fogerty, who I'm named after, James Fogerty. And I think that would be kind of cool because I never got to meet him. He passed about almost a year before I was born. I think that'd be cool.
Nothing wrong with that. See, weren't those hard-hitting questions? Got to make you think on my podcast every once in a while.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you have this repetition of those are the same questions you ask of everybody. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, but I appreciate it, Jim. Thanks for joining me. I know you're busy, and I want that Mick Jagger picture in the background. How do I get my hands on that?
Okay, so this Mick Jagger is it's a painting on wood that is this painting is a Barry Berkey original, okay, and it's going to be at the Just for Kicks auction, which is a Warren JFK, warrenjfk.com, my alma mater. This will be on auction and display in mid-March for their Just for Kicks. It's obviously a nonprofit, and it's I want to say it's probably square. It's probably a 36 by 36. It's a resin piece. It's actually covered in resin, so this will last forever. And
I think our wife ordered a picture that big for our wedding to hang on our house.
Yeah, which is so this is like a centerpiece photo or centerpiece painting. You'd really like, this is like cool for like a man cave. I have a lot of Barry Berkey originals in the studio here, and one he just came and picked up the other day. It was the Hong Kong, or what we call Wu-Tang Fooey. So it's Hong Kong Fooey, and it has the Wu-Tang symbol, many Wu-Tang symbols in the background. And that hung above our Prodcast space for 2 years, and he recently sold that painting for almost $1,000, and he's shipping it to, I don't know if it's going to Kansas City or where it's going, but you can get a Barry Berkey original at the Just for Kicks auction. So yeah,
there you go. WarrenJFK.com. Throw them a little loving. Jim, if someone wants to get a hold of you or wants to listen to your podcast, where do they go?
So they can go to the Prodcast, Prodcast.net, and all the episodes are listed there. And there's links to our Facebook page and things of that nature. Or you can always check us out at a very antiquated and in need of update website, 2ticksandthedog.com. And it's the number 2, numerical 2, ticksandthedog.com. That's probably the best places. Or you can always check us out at Facebook. You know, I got obviously my personal Facebook page, but there's a Prodcast Facebook page, and there's a 2 Ticks page, and you know, all that good stuff.
All that fun social media platforms.
Yeah.
Jim, I appreciate you taking time. Thank you everyone for watching us tonight. For more episodes of interviews, announcements, and further podcasts, go to anthonyvspano.com. Everyone have a great night, and God bless. Good night, everyone.
Thanks for having me, man.